The sound of victory echoed as some villagers made their way through the village, singing the praises of Ani, the greatest warrior of his time, as he single-handedly conquered some group of bandits that invaded the village. The villagers sung his praise as they all headed to the palace. The king was pleased with his might and overwhelming strength. He gave him possession to few pieces of land and bags of cowries. Over the years, Ani has earned a reputable rank for himself. He was a great warrior, known across the village, one to defeat battalions of army and return victoriously. No one has been able to defeat him. Many called him son of the gods, and some said he must have done something right to be blessed with such strength. Yet, amidst the praises, and he lived an unfortunate life. He had buried 3 wives, and none had borne him a child. Whispers spread through the village that each of his wives had met their untimely end shortly after stepping into his home. At first, it was dismissed as misfortune, but when the same fate struck thrice, fear took root. The villagers gossiped that he was cursed. The Medians trembled at the thought of marrying him, terrified that they too would meet the same fate. But despite the rumors, Ani's value as a warrior overshadowed the fear. He remained an esteemed figure in the community. After he returned home, his heart was empty. The silence was loud. Nobody to give him a warm welcome. He stood before the grave of his late wives, wondering why the gods has decided to punish him like this. The next day, he summoned his very good friend Obina, looking if he could find answers to his questions. But Obina is nothing but a mortal and cannot see beyond human eyes. But Obina offered to take him to Abagana, a very faraway village that harbored one of the greatest native doctors called Osa. Upon arriving, Osa studied Ani carefully. "Stretch out your hands," Osa said to Ani. He looked into his palms. His expression was flattered. What seems to be heavy in his mouth? "A great sacrifice was made for the gift of you," Osa said. "Your mother paid a great deal for the power you possessed." Ani's eyes widened in shock. "Tell me, wise one, what did she do?" he asked eagerly. "Your mother was married for 15 years without a child. On the night when the full moon appeared in the sky, she stood naked before the moon and made a heavy promise to the gods in exchange for a son. She asked that they bless her with a son, not just a son, but one who will possess a great strength, too strong that he can uproot an iroko tree with his bare hands. A son that will bring honor to her family and put shame on people that called her barren. And in exchange for what Annie pressed, his gods twisted in anticipation of the answer. Osa hesitated before delivering the heavy truth. In exchange for her lineage, Annie's mouth fell open in disbelief. "What kind of sacrifice is this?" he whispered. Osa assured him that something could be done to reverse the course, but the cost would be even greater. He went back home consumed by the thought of the revelation. Of what use is the gift of power and strength if our lineage will be forgotten once I'm gone? But he had no time to dwell on the matter. As the annual wrestling festival approached, he was to represent his village, and he had to give it his all. It was tradition that before the competition, a spiritual cleansing will be performed on the warriors. During the ritual, no woman was allowed outside, as the chief priest and his ordained workers paraded Annie through the village, performing sacred rites. On the day of the ritual, a young girl named Ozioma was returning to the village after a long stay at her maternal home. Unaware of the ceremony, she walked joyfully, singing as she neared the village. The chief priest, upon hearing a female voice, immediately covered Annie's eyes to prevent him from seeing her. It was believed that such a sight would weaken his chance of victory. The priest ordered his men to capture the girl and take her to the palace. Ozioma was seized and locked away under the king's command. The law was clear. Any woman seen during the sacred ritual was to be beheaded by the village chosen warrior. Her parents, upon hearing the news, rushed to the palace, falling to their knees before the king, pleading for mercy. But tradition was absolute. The king dismissed them, stating that their fate would serve as a lesson to others. The day of the wrestling competition arrived, and he fought fiercely, defeating all his opponents. It was said that the victory in the wrestling match brought prosperity to the village, and indeed the people rejoiced. The king is overjoyed. He turned to Annie. "Ask me for anything, and it shall be yours," he declared. Annie hesitated. "Your Highness, allow me to think on this great offer." The king granted his request. That evening, Annie returned home to find his doorstep flowing with gifts. Basket of yams, plantains, keg of palm wine, all given by grateful villagers. His heart was filled with joy. The next morning, Ozioma was brought before the king, Annie, and the elders. Her hands and feet were bound, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded for mercy. The king's voice was firm. "You know the law. You disrupted the sacred ritual. Do you accept your fate?" Trembling, Ozioma explained, "I grew up with my grandmother and was unaware of the ritual. I chose the wrong day to return home. Please have mercy." The king was unmoved. "Take her to the field and carry out the punishment." But Annie hesitated. The sight of her burned and weeping unsettled him. Then he remembered the king's promise. "Your Highness, you asked me to make a request, and I asked for this girl's life. Let her serve me as my slave for the rest of her days." Grasps rippled through the court. The king frowned. "This is against our tradition. But a king's word cannot be undone." And he cantered. Bounded by his promise, the king reluctantly agreed. Rumors spread through the village like a wildfire. People muttered that Annie had wasted a wish, that he could have asked for the throne or anything of great value. But instead, he chose a May girl. Ozioma was taken to his home, and for the first time, his house felt less empty. She worked diligently, cooking and tending to his needs. That night, she stood at the base of his bed, unwilling to sleep before her master. "You may retire to bed," Annie told her. "May the gods forbid that I rest before my master," Ozioma replied. But Annie does not understand why her presence stirred something within him. The next morning, he took her hunting. As they walked, he stole glances at her. But when their eyes met, he quickly looked away. "Why did you spare my life?" Ozioma asked. Annie hesitated. "Do not question me," Ozioma obeyed. But Annie found himself drawn to her. The warmth she brought, the joy of returning home to someone, the melody of her voice filling the air. He had never felt this way before. One day, while speaking with Obinna beneath a tree, Annie made a decision. "I'm willing to undo my mother's sacrifice to have my own family." The next morning, they journeyed to Abadana. Before Osa, Annie declared, "Tell me what I must do to undo the sacrifice." Osa's expression darkened. "The price is great. A sacrifice powerful enough to appease the gods." Annie leaned in, eager to hear the sacrifice. Osa whispered the price into his ear. His jaw dropped in horror. Obinna's heart pounded. What did he say? And he turned away, his face pale. This is too much to be spoken aloud.